Hi parents, it's Mr. Martens here. Just making this video to help you understand, a couple things. So here's the goals of this video for you as a parent. Number one is to understand the expectations of your child in self-paced Math 8. Number two, to understand what each item of the progress report is. So I'll be sending out progress reports and what those are and how to understand them. Which gets to number three, to understand and interpret the progress reports that are sent home. And fourthly, to understand how the suggested pace of the course may impact your child. So those are the goals of this YouTube video. I hope it helps you to understand kind of what your child's doing and the expectations. So first of all, your child, when they come into Math 8, they get study guides. I've created study guides for the entire course. And here's what the cover page of a study guide, so the front page of a study guide looks like. On the cover page, what they see at the bottom is the exact order, so in other words, the schedule or the order that they're going to do things in. So they'll always do in this case, they would do the study guide first, then the notes, then the textbook assignment, then the study guide, then the notes, then the textbook assignment, then they have a quiz. So this tells them the exact order they can work in. The big thing that I focus on with your child is that they never move on without checking in with me, and they also don't move on if they're not understanding something. That's the most important thing, is that your child masters a concept before moving on to the next thing. So for example, what would a study guide be? So let me just show you, for example, what the 2.1 study guide looks like and what your child would be doing. So the 2.1 study guide is basically a page that looks like this, and it's several pages. In some cases, what they're going to be doing is just reading parts of a textbook and writing down what they're going to learn and writing down some definitions, etc. And these were all created by me, so I know how they work quite intimately. But first of all, they'll be taking lots of definitions down, etc. And along the way, they're going to be learning things. So what we have them do, so they'll go through the entire study guide, and you can ask your child to take a peek at their study guide to see what they're working on and that type of thing. But when they're done their study guide, what they need to do, so you'll see at the very end of a study guide, the next thing that's there is it kind of skipped along there. The next thing that's there is basically a set of notes. But what I ask your child to do is to put up their hand before they move on to the notes, so they can check in to see if they're understanding it. What I mean by that is all of the questions in their study guide that have check marks are questions that help them to show that they're understanding it. So there's nothing that's in the textbook that has answers. So what happens when they put up their hand is I, as a teacher, go around to them and see if they're getting those questions correct. If not, it gives me a teaching opportunity to kind of teach them and help them along the way. And if they're getting it correct, what I do is I initial those questions. So if they're getting these ones correct, I just initial it. If not, I don't initial it, or one of my student aides initials it. We only initial it once it's correct. Once all of those check-marked items are correct, your child will move on to the notes. And the notes, basically, I have made YouTube lessons for the entire course, relatively short. There's two ways that your child can access the YouTube lessons. One is through scanning the code here, and then it will come up straight on their phone. There's a QR scanner. They can see the YouTube lesson on their phone. Second option is to go to a computer that's in my classroom or a computer at home. I supply them with headphones as well. And they can go to my website, which I'll show you right now. So if you go to wgss.ca, you can go to my website through Staff Connection and find my website alphabetically here. And I'll show you my website and what it looks like. It will look something like this. And they can go, if they want to see a YouTube lesson, they can go to YouTube and look into Chapter 2. So here's Math 8, Chapter 2, if they're doing the 2.1 lesson. And they can look at here you go, the 2.1 lesson, which looks like it's 3.5 minutes long. So your child will watch that lesson to review what they've learned, and they'll take down the notes. So that was the second thing that they'd be expected to do. And the third thing would be a textbook assignment. Okay, so the textbook assignments are in the textbook, and the answers are in the back of the textbook. So let me show you an example of my expectations for textbook assignments. And again, the focus here is always, are you understanding it? Are you learning? When you're making mistakes, are you understanding what's going wrong, and are you seeking help? So here's an example of a student who's done a really good job of a textbook assignment. So for example, one of my expectations is that they show their work. So what's their reasoning and that type of thing. My second expectations, once they're done the entire assignment, they'll show their work, show their understanding, etc. They don't have to write down the questions themselves. What they'll do, but you'll notice that this student showed her work. What they'll do afterwards is go to the back of the textbook and they'll see if they got them right. So essentially, there's no point in doing math if you don't know if you're getting it correct or not. So this student has gone about and showed me that they marked their assignment and they got one wrong. So the last expectation, if they are doing their math, their textbook assignments, the last expectation is if they're getting any wrong, that's where the actual learning occurs. So if the student's getting one wrong, what they should do is find out what they got wrong and correct it. So this girl corrected it. You'll see other ones that she corrected as well coming up here. So these ones she corrected, but also showing the work for the corrections. And if they don't understand how they got it wrong, they need to ask for help. So that's, again, the big ticket item there. So that's kind of the progression of the course. And after that, what they would do, so if you look at the cover page here, sorry, this is quite a busy lesson, but maybe they finished the study guide and I've got to check that they got it right. They did the notes and took those down. They finished and handed in the textbook assignments, so they hand in their textbook assignments. Then they continue to move on throughout the chapter. They'll have quizzes, etc., etc. And then what happens is they'll get towards the end. So all these study guides have different things. You'll notice that at the end of the study guide, so let's check out the 2.3 study guide. At the end of the study guide, so this is the very end of chapters. Here's another study guide. At the very end of chapter 2, so any chapter will have this. At the very end of chapter 2, what they're going to have is a couple of things before the test. They're going to have a review assignment from the textbook, and they're also going to have a practice test. And both of these, again, they're going to get to understand what they're getting wrong, check in with Mr. Martens, and do all that stuff before the last thing in the chapter, which is the summative final thing of a chapter to show me that they understand what's going on, and that's the unit test. So that's kind of how your child progresses throughout the course and throughout this chapter, and how you can access different things. So let's look at some progress reports. And I got a couple of samples here. So I'm going to be emailing progress reports home generally every 8 school days. So when I see your child first block is when I'll check in with them and get to email a progress report home. So here's what it might look like. So one thing I noticed right away is some suggested pace. So it says here, if you aren't done the 2.3 textbook assignment, extra time needs to be committed to math. So if you look at this student, these are all the exact same items that are on the front of the study guide, so same order. This is the way they progress throughout the course. You'll notice a couple of things about this student. First of all, he hasn't finished the 2.3 textbook assignment. He's finished up to the end of the 2.3 study guide. That's why it says yes there. So you should probably spend a little bit more time at home or in flex block or more committed time in class working a little bit on the course. The second thing I noticed is that this student accidentally missed something in the order. They forgot to take the 2.2 notes down, which might affect their learning in the future. So that's something that you'll see coming home to you regularly. And yeah, usually what I do is just write down yes if they're done. The only other thing you're noticing is on quizzes, I actually give them a score, and they're expected to do corrections on it. And on textbook assignments, they're getting like good, satisfactory, excellent, and that's related to are they showing their work, are they marking it, and are they doing their corrections. So that's what a progress report looks like. Now let's look at a progress. Oh, another thing that you'll notice here for this student, and you'll want to look at this carefully, is this student, because they're behind, I probably had a conversation with them and said, okay, let's make a goal date for the test. So you'll notice here, right here, that I had a conversation with this student named Johnny, and we decided Johnny's going to do the Chapter 2 unit test on October 18th or earlier. Because if we wait and wait and wait and wait, maybe Johnny will never get the chapter done because he's a little bit lazy or something. So again, I'm focusing on a student who's a little bit behind in scheduling. If your student's ahead or your child's ahead, they're doing absolutely fine. So let's say that 8 days goes by and I send home another progress report. So let's see how Johnny's doing in 8 days from now. So here's 8 days later. 8 days later, I send home another progress report. A couple of things I notice again is because it's 8 days later, I have a new suggested pace. So if you aren't done the 3.1 study guide, extra time needs to be committed to math. So you'll notice that Johnny, first of all, isn't quite done the 3.1 study guide, although he's really close to being done that. So that's where he's at. He's a tiny bit behind and should work at it, but if he's self-motivated and just learning more slowly, that's absolutely fine. Again, the focus is learning, so it's nothing too particular. A couple other things that I notice is the date for the test has come and gone. So he did the Chapter 2 unit test, and let me highlight that again in green. So on October 18th, Johnny did the Chapter 2 unit test, and he got 28 out of 39. And a couple of other things I notice are these DNFs. So these DNFs mean that he didn't finish those because the test date came, he didn't have time to finish those. Otherwise, so he's just being a little bit lazy and irresponsible. So it says he didn't finish them, but he did do the test. So that's the way that we're going to kind of keep students sort of on a pace, but students who are just working at a slower pace but are committed to the process won't have to necessarily set goals as far as when to do unit tests. They will be able to do that themselves. So that's essentially the structure. Another thing at home that you could do if you want more than having progress reports every 8 days, or you want to know where your child should be at, is on my website. So if you look at my website here, so here's my website, there is a calendar. So if you click on calendar, you can find your child's block. So let's say, for example, it was October 14th, like it is today, and your child was in block 2-3. You could check, so you could click on that block and scroll down, and I'm just going to make this bigger for you. And it even tells you the suggested pace. So it says here, the suggested pace is that your child is doing the 3.1 notes, the 3.1 study guide, and starting the 3.1 textbook assignment. So that's my suggested pace for the day. So at the end of the day, you could ask your child if they're doing that. And you can also expect progress reports approximately every 8 days. So just to review, to see if we've answered the goals of this lesson, we've looked at the expectations of your child as far as study guides, notes, textbook assignments before getting to a test. Secondly, we've looked at what each item of the progress report is. Thirdly, we've understood and interpreted the progress reports that are sent home, and we looked at 2 progress reports as Johnny was moving through Math 8 and how to interpret those. And fourthly, we now understand how the suggested pace of the course may impact your child. So if your child's a little bit lazy, we may have to set some goal dates for doing unit tests, whereas other students just are sort of motivated by those suggested paces to do some work at home, and other students may be a little bit ahead of that pace, and that's absolutely fine as well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you.